If your Mirage has been riding low in the back end, these are the tools you're going to need. Change out the back shocks so you can get it riding a little stiffer and you don't bottom out every time you hit the tiniest bump in the road. It's a pretty gradual thing that happens over time with these cars. You don't notice it right away, but all of a sudden, just a bag or two of groceries has that thing flatten out in the back. These Monroe 55, 58s are the only shocks that I found that cross over for this vehicle. There might be some other options out there, but whatever they are, I don't know about them. It was hard enough to hunt these down, so this is what we'll be putting in. Based on price, factory shocks were not an option. You'll be wanting two of them, one for the left side and one for the right side. They are not side specific, so you'll just need two of them to do the complete rear end of the vehicle. For this video, I did pull the tire on this vehicle, but it will not be absolutely necessary for you to do this if you did not want to. This is something you could do without jacking up the car and without taking the tire off. Cat opted to keep an eye on the driveway and not help out. This is where your 17mm socket is going to come into play. This right here is tightened down pretty tight, so you're going to want to get some leverage on it one way or the other. I opted for a cheater pipe. And then I broke my ratchet. That's my ratchet breaking. The chicken also opted to not participate in this particular repair activity today. This support here is optional. Once that bolt comes out of the bottom of the shock, that whole control arm, I guess you could call it, wants to fall down quite a ways. So I just put that under there to keep it from falling super far. It wasn't really necessary. And that's it. You're done on the bottom side. It's a lot of work, but once it's out, it's out. You got this cute little trap door right here. That's where the top of the shock is bolted in. Pop that off, and that's where your 14mm wrench is going to go. You're going to have to grab the threaded end with something to get that nut to start loosening up. I used an adjustable. You could use vice grips or a very small wrench. Whatever you want to use to get that held still is going to work just fine. It is slotted on the top. You wouldn't want to grab it by the threads. If you booger them up, you're not going to be able to get that nut all the way off. I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you the fun story of how I tried to reuse most of the hardware from the original shock when I went and replaced these. There's a whole thing of footage I'm not going to show you. It's a huge waste of everybody's time. You do not want to try to reuse the rubber pieces from the old shock. Use all the new rubber grommets, use all the new nuts. It's going to save you a huge hassle. I don't know why I tried to do it. It was a monstrous waste of time. So while I turn a wrench for an eternity, I'm going to remind everybody that my chickens need likes and this channel likes subscriptions. So if you like what you're seeing, consider dropping one of either or both. So now that old shock is out, we're going to give it a quick look next to the new one, make sure everything's all matchy-matchy, everything's going to look and fit just the way it's supposed to. So these two pieces there, you've got your rubber boot that covers up the exposed piece of shock rod, pulling off right there. That I'm going to keep. And then the metal cup that sits on top of it that keeps it stuck on that metal rod, I guess you could say, that stays as well. Everything else can go away. So all of our diameters are the same. Everything measures up. Everything looks like it'll work. So that right there is going to go back on.
Right there. Don't push it too hard.
Now these two pieces here, I glued them together. They did not want to stay together, so I glued that rubber boot into that metal cup. So you can push that shaft down by hand. It's not that tough to do. And you're just going to let that slide right back up. Guide that bit of threaded end through the hole in the middle of that rubber boot and that metal dish that's on the top. These are the pieces that came with the new shock. Top. Bottom. And those are all the pieces that are going to go and stay on the lower end before you start working on the inside of the car. So since I took the tire off, I'm putting the tire back on and I'm going to lower the car down a little bit so I can guide the upper portion of that shock up and through the fender. I guess wheel well would be the proper terminology for that. Figured it'd be best to double check and make sure everything looked proper on the inside before I let everything down, just in case there was a small problem of sorts.
Top. Bottom.
Now that you got that threaded end of the shock sticking up, it's time to start the assembly on the inside. You're going to need that rubber piece, this metal cap, and a nut. That's it. And that squeaking noise tells you you've gone as far as you can without locking up that centerpiece so that you can tighten it down as tight as it needs to be. You can see here that center shaft is spinning. You want to keep that sitting still while you're tightening up that nut. Just want to get that good and tight. Make sure that it's not going to spin off at some point down the road, and that's all you got to do. That's the project in a nutshell. All steps needed to do the passenger side are identical to everything you've seen done here on the driver's side. So everybody take care and thanks for watching.